He raised his glass with confidence and said, "I gift myself a divorce." His friends laughed, glasses clinked, applause followed. He thought I would shrink. He thought I would stay quiet. But I lifted my glass too, and in that moment, he realized something had slipped from his hands. Not the marriage, but the control of the story. He always liked an audience, not in an artistic way, but in that very specific masculine way of believing that being seen is the same as being important. That night, he chose the restaurant with the same care he chose his words whenever he wanted to sound more powerful than he really was. Soft lighting, sophisticated music, tables close enough for others to overhear, but not so close that it felt vulgar. It was a dinner with friends, or at least that's what he called it. I knew something was in the air, not because he was nervous, he never was, but because he was too comfortable, too confident. The kind of confidence that only appears when someone believes they've already won before the final round even begins. His friends arrived laughing loudly, long hugs, repeated jokes, exaggerated stories. He was the center. He always had been. And I, as so many times before, occupied that discreet place he liked to call elegant. The waiter poured the wine. He insisted on tasting it first. "Excellent," he said, swirling the glass like an expert. I watched in silence, not out of submission, but out of habit. Years of living with someone who confused being heard with being right teach you the art of observation. The conversation revolved around work, achievements, future plans. He spoke as if something great was always just around the corner. His friends reinforced it. It was a perfectly balanced ecosystem of male ego. Then he cleared his throat. That was the first sign. He placed his glass in the center of the table, tapped it lightly with his finger, a rehearsed gesture, and smiled. Confident, almost theatrical. "Guys," he began, "I'd like to make a toast." His friends immediately lit up. Someone lifted a glass before even knowing why. Another joked, "Here comes the speech." He loved that. He half stood from his chair, not fully, just enough to command attention, just enough to look important. "I've always believed that life is made of cycles," he said, "and that we need to know when one cycle ends, so a better one can begin." I kept my eyes on my plate, not because I was surprised, but because in that exact moment I understood everything. "So tonight," he continued, raising his glass higher, "I gift myself a divorce." Silence. Just 1 second, then laughter, loud laughter. Some shocked, some uncomfortable, but laughter nonetheless. Glasses went up. Someone called him brave. Another talked about new beginnings. He smiled, satisfied. In his mind, that was the peak of the performance, the scene where he became the protagonist, and I, the silent extra. He didn't look at me right away. He waited, as if expecting impact. When he finally turned toward me, he found something he didn't expect. Calm. No tears, no shock, no humiliation written on my face. I took a breath, picked up my glass with the same elegance I had used my entire life, and I raised it. "A toast," I said, my voice steady. The laughter faded. His friends exchanged glances. "To the divorce," I continued, looking straight at him, "which in this case really is a gift." He blinked, literally. "And to freedom," I added with a soft smile, "especially mine." A different kind of silence settled over the table. Not awkward, revealing. I gently clinked my glass against his. The sound of crystal echoed for just a second. I smiled, and I drank. The wine was perfect. In that moment, something shifted. He didn't know it yet, but I did. That night would not be remembered as the dinner where he announced the divorce. It would be remembered as the night he lost control of the narrative, and that was only the beginning. After the toast, the dinner continued, or at least it pretended to. Plates arrived, cutlery moved, the music kept playing softly in the background, but something in the air had shifted. It wasn't tension, it was discomfort. The kind that appears when a script slips out of the hands of the person who thought they were directing the scene. He tried to reclaim the center of the table. "Well," he said, forcing a light laugh, "since everything's been said, Everything, to him, meant only what he had planned to say. One of his friends mentioned a trip. Another brought up work. Conversations restarted, but without the same enthusiasm. Something had broken the celebratory mood, and it wasn't the divorce itself. It was my reaction, or rather, the reaction he didn't get. He watched me from the corner of his eye. I felt it, but I didn't return the look. I ate calmly, sipped my wine. The risotto was excellent. The jazz in the background felt intentional. I laughed when something was genuinely funny. I didn't force anything. I didn't dramatize, and that unsettled him far more than tears ever would have. Because he wanted explanations, he wanted questions, he wanted emotion that matched the size of his announcement. And I offered presence. At one point, he leaned closer and spoke in a low voice, almost confidential. "Are you okay?" The question wasn't care, it was control. "I'm great," I replied naturally. He frowned. "Really? Really?" I said, smiling as I cut my food. That didn't match the version of me he had built in his head. The woman he believed I was should have been falling apart, not enjoying the main course. Marina, the only other woman at the table, the wife of one of his friends, looked at me with curiosity, not judgment, recognition, the kind of look that says, "I see what you're doing." She lifted her glass slightly in my direction. I mirrored the gesture, a silent toast, woman to woman. As the dinner neared its end, he stood up to go to the restroom. Passing behind my chair, he leaned in and murmured, "We'll talk later." I slowly lifted my eyes to meet his. "We don't need to." He froze for a brief second, then kept walking, his steps a little less confident than before. I knew that sentence would echo in his mind for hours, maybe days. When he returned, dessert was being served. The atmosphere was quieter. His friends avoided eye contact with me, not out of disdain, but because they no longer knew what role they were supposed to play. Goodbyes were quick. Awkward hugs, polite kisses on the cheek, vague phrases like "take care." Funny how no one said "I'm sorry." Outside, the night air was cool. City lights reflected on shop windows. He walked beside me in silence, hands in his pockets. He didn't look victorious. He looked confused. "You're not going to say anything?" he asked as we reached the car. I stopped and looked at him calmly. "What would you like me to say?" "I don't know," he answered. "Something." I smiled softly. "You already said everything tonight." We got into the car. The drive home was quiet, but it wasn't a heavy silence. It was clean, resolved, at least on my side. When we arrived, he tossed his keys onto the table with more force than necessary. "You're not even going to argue." "Argue about what?" I asked, hanging my coat carefully. "The divorce." "You already toasted to it," I replied. "I assumed it was decided." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the room. "I thought you'd react differently." There it was, the naked truth. "In what way?" I asked. "Cry. Question it. Ask to talk." "I did talk," I said. "You just didn't notice." He stopped. "When?" "When I raised my glass." He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. There was no argument for that. I went to the bedroom and pulled a medium-sized suitcase from the closet, the one I hadn't used in years. I began placing clothes inside calmly, choosing pieces I actually liked. He appeared at the door. "What are you doing?" "Organizing." "You're leaving?" "Not tonight," I replied, folding a silk blouse. "But soon." He crossed his arms against the doorframe. "You're being cold." I met his eyes, steady. "No, I'm being clear." I continued packing. Each movement was a quiet affirmation. There was no rush, no anger, only decision. "You're not going to make this difficult?" he asked, his voice mixing surprise with something close to fear. I smiled. "Difficult for whom?" He exhaled. Defeated by a calm he didn't know how to fight. That night, we slept in separate rooms. For the first time in years, I slept deeply, without weight, without fear, without expectation, while he turned from side to side, trying to pinpoint the exact moment he had lost control. And what he still didn't know was that the game had ended before it ever truly began. The next morning, he woke up as if he had a hangover, even though he hadn't drunk that much. I, on the other hand, woke up light, not because I enjoy change, but because clarity had finally arrived. And clarity, when it comes, brings a peace that can feel almost offensive to those who thrive on confusion. I went to the kitchen and opened the window, the smell of fresh coffee mixed with the cool morning air. I prepared everything the way I like it. Strong coffee, toast in the toaster, unsalted butter, apricot jam. That simple ritual, the one I had repeated for years while trying to convince myself that normality was the same as happiness. He appeared in the doorway, hair messy, t-shirt wrinkled, wearing the face of a man expecting a scene. Maybe broken plates, maybe tears, maybe a desperate attempt at conversation. I was spreading butter on toast. He stopped, visibly irritated by the image. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Very," I replied, taking a bite with genuine pleasure. He narrowed his eyes. "How can you?" I chewed slowly. Thought about answering therapy, but decided it would be unnecessary cruelty. The most elegant victory isn't the one that humiliates. It's the one that simply moves on. "I was tired," I said. Sleeping well was a kindness I owed myself. He pulled out a chair and sat down, as if the kitchen had suddenly turned into a meeting room. "I think we need to talk." I poured coffee into my cup. Only mine. Not out of revenge, out of a new habit. "You already talked," I said. "With your friends. With waiters as witnesses. With the sound of glasses clinking as background music." He exhaled sharply. "That was a way of doing it." "A way of doing what?" I asked. He hesitated. "Ending things." "Oh," I replied calmly. "So it was a farewell toast." He opened his mouth. That's exactly how you presented it," I finished, my voice steady. He fell silent for a moment, then tried a different approach. The reasonable man. "You're really going to act like you don't care?" I looked up at him. "I cared for years. I just stopped showing it to someone who didn't know how to recognize it." Something landed inside him. I could see it, but pride still held him upright. He tried to smile. That familiar smile of a man who wants to appear in control, even when he isn't. "Okay, so, how do you want to do this?" The question sounded like a business proposal. I finished my coffee. "The right way." He leaned forward. "Right for whom?" "For me," I replied. And that was when he finally understood. I wasn't asking for permission. I was informing him. After breakfast, I went to the bedroom and took out a folder where I kept important documents. Yes, I had a folder. Yes, he had never noticed, because he believed organization was something that simply happened, like Wi-Fi. I sat at the dining table, opened the folder, and began separating papers, bank statements, contracts, utility bills, payment receipts. He walked by and stopped. "What's that?" "My life," I answered, "in order." He laughed nervously. "Are you being dramatic now?" I looked at him calmly. Drama would be me screaming. This is logistics. He took a step back, as if logistics were a dangerous word. "You're planning something?" "I'm living," I corrected. "The difference is that now I'm doing it without pretending." He moved closer, curious and uncomfortable at the same time. "What documents are those?" I lifted one sheet slightly. "Remember when you said I wasn't involved in the important things?" "Yes. I was involved enough to know where everything is, who pays what, and why." His expression changed. "Are you trying to hurt me?" I almost laughed. Almost. But I kept my composure. "You hurt yourself when you assume an organized woman is a weak one." He swallowed. I kept sorting the papers into neat piles. Joint accounts, assets, loans. Each stack represented a piece of the marriage he thought he controlled. Then, as if the universe had perfect timing, he decided to put on a small show. One last test of power. "I'm going out," he said, grabbing his keys with unnecessary force. "I need air." "Of course," I replied without looking up. He stopped at the door. "You're not going to ask where I'm going?" I looked at him calmly. "You're already a free man, remember?" He froze for a second. I could almost hear the mental gears grinding as he tried to turn that into a victory. It didn't work. He left. When the door closed, I took a deep breath and smiled. Not out of cruelty, but out of genuine relief. For years he had called me cold, controlling, hard to read. No, I was just tired of repeating the obvious. I picked up my phone and texted my friend Clara. "Coffee today? I need to celebrate something." She replied within seconds. "Did you kill someone?" I laughed quietly. "Worse. I chose myself." Then I sent another message, this time to a lawyer I knew from social events, someone who always seemed efficient. "Hi, Dr. Helena. I'd like to schedule a conversation about divorce." I hit send and felt a calm so deep it almost felt irresponsible, but it wasn't. It was maturity. 2 hours later, the lawyer replied with a polite, objective message suggesting available times. I booked the appointment for the next day, because when a woman decides, she doesn't think about it a little longer. She schedules it. Later that afternoon, he came home with a different energy, less arrogance, more emotional negotiation. He brought flowers. Yes, flowers. He walked in holding the bouquet like someone in a commercial for second chances. Red roses, elegant wrapping, a golden ribbon. "I thought of you," he said. I looked at the flowers. They were beautiful. And that's when a quiet, almost comical realization crossed my mind. He thought flowers were Cottrell plus Zed. I smiled politely. "Thank you. You can put them in the vase." He looked disappointed by the lack of reaction, but complied. Sat on the couch trying to appear calm. "I just didn't expect you to take this so seriously." I turned toward him. "You toasted to the divorce in a restaurant." He tried to laugh. It was a joke. I tilted my head. "Funny. I've never seen a joke require applause." He fell silent. I continued calmly. "Do you know the difference between you and me?" "What?" he asked, defensive. "You make announcements. I make decisions." And in that moment, I saw something rare on his face. Fear. Not the fear of losing the marriage. He had already ended that publicly. The fear of losing control over the story. And I thought, with a serene kind of amusement, "Welcome to my chapter." The next morning, I woke up with that strange feeling of someone who knows exactly what needs to be done and is still surprised by how calm it feels. He left early, said he had meetings. I didn't ask which ones. For the first time in a long while, his schedule was no longer my concern. I got ready slowly, nothing dramatic, nothing exaggerated. I chose a simple, elegant dress, the kind that doesn't ask for attention. It receives it. I tied my hair back, applied a discreet lipstick, grabbed my bag, and left the apartment as if I were running a small errand. But it wasn't small. It was decisive. The lawyer's office was in a modern building with wide windows and a view that suggested future. Dr. Helena was exactly as I had imagined, composed, direct, efficient. No unnecessary softness, no wasted words. "Before we begin," she said after introductions, "I need to ask you something simple. Are you sure about this decision?" I didn't hesitate. "I'm at peace with it." She smiled, the kind of smile that recognizes certainty. "Good, then we'll do this properly." We talked about assets, accounts, timelines, things I once feared I wouldn't understand. But I did. Nothing startled me, because what truly frightened me had happened years earlier. The idea of staying where I wasn't respected. When I left her office, I sat at a cafe nearby and ordered a cappuccino. The foam was perfect, comforting. I checked my phone and saw messages from Clara. "Tell me everything. I'm dying of curiosity, and I'm proud of you." I smiled, took a photo of the coffee, the elegant table, the sunlight spilling through the window. "Later tonight," I texted. She replied with a wine glass emoji. Perfect. That afternoon, I handled practical matters I had postponed for years. I opened a bank account in my name only, updated personal records, made small changes that together felt enormous. Not because they were difficult, but because I had delayed them for too long. At the end of the day, he came home quieter than usual, dropped his keys on the table, and sat on the couch like someone exhausted by something he couldn't name. "I ran into Paolo today," he said suddenly. Paolo was one of the friends from the dinner, the one who laughed the loudest. "Oh," I replied. "What a coincidence." He watched my tone carefully. He asked about you. Asked what? He said you were elegant. I looked up from the book I was reading. Is that a question? He frowned. He said he was impressed by how you handled that night. I smiled faintly. That's nice. He sighed, uncomfortable. It's strange how everyone suddenly has an opinion. There it was, the beginning of the shift. People always have opinions, I said. They just don't like it when reality doesn't match the story they imagined. He went quiet. That bothered him more than any argument ever could. That evening, I went out with Clara. We chose a small, cozy restaurant. Warm lighting, soft music. No spectacle, no stage. Just comfort and honest laughter. So, she said as soon as we sat down, tell me the exact moment you decided. I thought for a second. When he needed me to be small, so he could feel big. She laughed out loud. Classic. I didn't scream, I didn't beg. I just raised my glass. Clara lifted hers. The best response possible. We toasted, not to divorce, to clarity. We talked for hours. I laughed at things I'd forgotten were funny. I realized how much I had shrunk to fit into a space that was never truly mine. At one point, Clara reached across the table and held my hand. You know you're going to be okay, right? I smiled. I already am. And it was true. When I got home, he was sitting at the table, phone in hand. You went out, he said, almost accusingly. I did, I replied, hanging my coat. Dinner with a friend. You seemed happy. I was. He swallowed. Don't you think it's strange, being happy now? I placed my bag down gently. What's strange is confusing relief with coldness. He stood up. Have you told people? Told them what? About the divorce. You told them first, I said. In public, with a toast. He ran a hand through his hair. People are talking. They always do. He hesitated. And what are they saying? I paused before answering. That I was elegant. That I was strong. That I deserve more. Each word landed like a quiet blow to his ego. No one's congratulating me, he said, almost to himself. I looked at him calmly. Maybe because a toast doesn't replace respect. He had no answer. That night, while he struggled to sleep, I lay awake thinking about something unexpected. For years, I believed I needed him to understand me. Now, I understood something far more liberating. I didn't need to be understood. I needed to be loyal to myself. And slowly, others were beginning to see that too. The next day, an unexpected message appeared on my phone. It was from Rodrigo, another friend who had laughed that night. Hi, I hope this isn't awkward. I just wanted to say I admire how you handled everything. I read it twice, not out of vanity, but because it confirmed something important. When a woman carries herself with grace, the world rearranges itself around her, and the laughter changes sides. In the days that followed, he changed his strategy. It was predictable. Men like him don't handle loss of control well, especially when that loss happens quietly. Without drama, without scenes, without chaos, they can later use to justify their version of the story. First came the reasonable man. I think we can do this in a mature way, he said one morning, sitting at the kitchen table as if we were in an improvised mediation session. I nodded while organizing my things in my bag. I've always thought maturity was silent, I replied. Not announced over dinner. He pretended not to hear that part. We could tell people together, he continued. That way it stays balanced. Balanced. An interesting word coming from someone who began everything by raising a glass. You mean controlled, I corrected gently. He smiled. That polished smile he used in meetings when he thought he was winning people over. I just don't want people jumping to the wrong conclusions. I stopped and looked at him calmly. People draw conclusions from what they see, I said, and what they saw was you toasting the end of the marriage. There's no editing that fixes that. He took a deep breath and shifted tone. That's when the sensitive man appeared. I never meant to hurt you, he said, leaning his elbows on the table. I just got lost. I almost smiled, not out of cruelty, but clarity. Funny, I replied, because I was the one who kept getting lost. In your silences, in your absences, in your prepared speeches. He went quiet. That wasn't part of the script. Don't you feel anything? he asked. I do, I answered. Gratitude. His eyes widened. Gratitude. Yes, I said. You were honest. Maybe for the first time, and that set me free. He stood up, restless, pacing the room. You're making this seem too easy. It's not easy, I said. It's decided. The word landed like a period at the end of a sentence. Over the next few days, messages started coming in. Mutual friends, acquaintances, people who had been at the dinner or had heard about it. Some asked carefully, others out of curiosity, none out of pity. And that disturbed him deeply, because the narrative he expected was simple. He was brave, she was bitter. But what was actually happening was something else entirely. She was whole. One evening he came home later than usual and collapsed onto the couch with an exaggerated sigh, waiting for a reaction. I kept reading. I ran into Marcelo today, he said. Another friend. Another laugh from that night. He said, you've changed. I looked up from my book. Change usually happens when you stop explaining yourself. He scratched his head. He said, you seem more confident now. Maybe because I am, I replied. He shook his head, as if that felt unfair. I never thought you would bloom like this. There it was, the sentence he would never admit in public. I closed my book calmly. And that was your biggest mistake, I said, thinking I survived despite you. I paused, when in fact I was just waiting to step out of your shadow. He fell silent. For the first time, no irony, no defense. That weekend, he suggested something that bordered on comedy. We could travel, he said, just to think. I laughed. I couldn't help it. You announced the divorce as a gift, I said, and now you want to put the decision on installments? He looked offended. I'm just trying to fix things. Some things weren't broken, I replied. They were surpassed. The word fell like a crystal glass hitting the floor. No noise, but impossible to put back together. On Monday, my lawyer called to confirm the next steps. Everything clear, everything organized, everything moving forward. When I hung up, he was standing in the doorway. So it's official? He asked. It always was, I replied, since the toast. He exhaled slowly, defeated by something he couldn't argue with. I thought you would fight. I smiled gently. I fought for years. Now I chose to win. That night he slept poorly. I slept deeply. And while he was still trying to understand where he had lost control of the performance, I was already somewhere else. Not physically, but emotionally. A place without an audience, without applause, without the need to prove anything. The real victory wasn't social, it was internal, and he was still trapped in his own performance. Freedom didn't arrive with a speech, it arrived by creating space. Space in my schedule, space in my mind, space in my body. In the first week after everything aligned legally, I noticed something curious. I was breathing better, not because something magical had happened, but because no one was occupying my air with expectations that were no longer mine. He began to notice the absences. Not mine, his. You're not coming home late tonight? He asked one evening, trying to sound casual. Maybe, I replied. I signed up for Pilates. He blinked. Pilates? Yes, I confirmed. Classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Great for posture and emotional spine. He didn't get the joke. That was fine. Not everything needs subtitles. Small changes began to appear in almost comical ways. I spent more time outside the house, not to escape, but to live. Coffee dates with Clara, bookstores, long walks without a destination. Simple things, but entirely new. And the funniest part, no one missed me, because I had never allowed myself to be absent before. One afternoon, Clara looked me up and down and laughed. What? I asked. You, she said. You look like someone who doesn't need permission anymore. I smiled. I think I forgot how. She raised an eyebrow. Forgot what? To explain myself. She reached across the table and held my hand. Do you know what I admire most about you right now? What? You're not running from anything. You're running towards something. That stayed with me the rest of the day. Meanwhile, he tried to keep up from a distance, asked too many questions, observed more than he spoke. He started noticing details he had never paid attention to before. "You changed your perfume," he commented one day. "I did," I replied. "Why?" I thought for a second. "Because now I choose only for myself." He fell silent. Silence bothered him now. One Friday, I came home with a smile I hadn't even realized I was wearing. He was in the living room. "Good day," he asked. "Great. Anything new?" "I started a course," I said, slipping off my shoes. "A course in what?" "Photography." His eyes widened. "Photography? Since when are you into that?" "Since always," I replied. "I just never had space." The word landed heavily. Space. He sat down. "I never stopped you." "No," I interrupted calmly. "You just occupied everything." It wasn't an attack. It was a statement. The following Saturday, I did something symbolic. I reorganized my closet. Not his, mine. I separated clothes that no longer made sense, donated what represented older versions of myself, kept only what made me feel comfortable, whole. He passed by the door and watched. "You're getting rid of a lot," he said. "No," I corrected. "I'm keeping only what fits." He tried to smile, but something in his eyes shifted. Not jealousy, irrelevance. Because while he tried to reposition himself in the story, I was already writing new chapters without him. The next week, I was invited to a small event from the photography course. Nothing fancy, just curious, interesting people. Light conversations about light, framing, captured moments. One of the classmates, Daniel, commented, "You have an interesting eye. Your photos capture silence." I smiled, maybe because I need it right now. I came home late, happy, whole. He was awake. "You seem different," he said. "I am," I replied. "Different from me?" I smiled softly. "Different for me." He lowered his gaze. "I thought after the divorce, you'd need time." "And I did," I said. "For myself." He inhaled deeply. "And me?" I paused before answering, not out of doubt, out of respect. "You needed an audience." I needed silence. He nodded slowly. For the first time, without resistance. That night I realized something important. He wasn't suffering because he had lost me. He was suffering because he had lost himself inside his own narrative. And I was finding myself in details too small to fit into a toast. Freedom didn't make a scene, but it started to make noise, a quiet, steady sound, like firm footsteps walking toward a life that finally belonged to me. He chose a Sunday. Sundays had always been his territory. That artificial intimacy, the illusion of depth just because the calendar slowed down. For years, it worked. This time, it didn't. "Can we talk?" he asked, standing in the doorway with a caution I had never seen before. I was finishing packing a small bag, nothing special, just simple things. A book, sunglasses, keys. "We can," I replied, "but be clear." He took a deep breath and sat on the couch as if preparing for a speech he had rehearsed many times, except rehearsal no longer guaranteed applause. "I was wrong," he began. There was no dramatic effect, no reaction from me, just polite attention. "I was wrong about the way I did things. The dinner, the toast. I could have handled it differently." I nodded slowly. "You could have." Encouraged by my calm agreement, he leaned forward. "I've been thinking a lot," he continued. "Maybe we lost ourselves along the way. Maybe there's still time." There it was. The final card. "Time for what?" I asked. "To try again," he said. "No audience. Just the two of us." I watched him for a few seconds, not out of nostalgia, but curiosity. I wanted to understand when he had started confusing access with entitlement. "What exactly are you asking for?" I asked. "A chance." I smiled lightly, not with irony, with clarity. "You toasted the end of our story in public," I said calmly. "What you're asking for now is a private rehearsal for a play that has already premiered." He rubbed his face. I was confused. "No," I corrected gently. "You were comfortable." The word landed with surgical precision. "Comfortable enough to expose me. Comfortable enough to laugh. Comfortable enough to believe I would stay exactly where you left me." He shook his head, processing. "I never thought you'd leave like this." "Like what?" I asked. "So whole." Something shifted in his eyes. Not regret, surprise. The kind that appears when someone realizes they underestimated the wrong person. "Don't you miss me?" he asked, almost pleading. I thought before answering, not out of hesitation but honesty. I miss who I was while trying to make us work, I said, but I don't miss who I had to stop being. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, resignation had replaced resistance. I lost you, he said. No, I replied. You lost access. Silence. A long, heavy silence. Necessary. He stood up slowly, like someone accepting an outcome he could no longer challenge. So this is it. It is, I confirmed. And it's okay. He smiled sadly. You were always strong. I just didn't see it. I tilted my head slightly. I did, and that was enough. I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. Before leaving, I turned back one last time. Thank you for the toast, I said. It was honest, just not in the way you intended. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. When the door closed behind me, I felt something rare. Not victory over someone, but victory over a cycle. The sun was high, the day open, the world wide again. And in that moment I knew with certainty the woman he tried to get back no longer existed. And the woman who existed now didn't need to be convinced of anything. Some victories don't make noise. They don't need an audience. They don't ask for applause. They simply happen. Inside, 6 months later, I woke up early without an alarm. Morning light filtered through the window of my new apartment. Small, but mine. Every piece of furniture chosen by me. Every object placed with intention. I made coffee and sat near the window. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the cool morning air. Sunlight touched simple things. The table, the cup, my hands. For years I believed happiness had to be shared to be real. I learned that peace doesn't. The divorce ended quietly. No drama, no disputes, no spectacle. Exactly the way I wanted it. He tried occasionally to reach out. Neutral messages, unnecessary questions, comments about good memories. I didn't respond with coldness. I responded with boundaries. Boundaries are polite and final. In one of those messages he wrote, I never imagined you would be doing so well. I read it, smiled, and didn't reply. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because some answers no longer need to be given. That morning I went for a walk without a destination. I entered a bookstore, bought a beautiful notebook, sat in a cafe, and began to write. Not about him, but about myself. Loose thoughts. Small plans, old desires. I noticed something curious. When a woman stops justifying herself, the world stops interrogating her. People began to look at me differently. Not with pity, not with invasive curiosity, but with respect. A quiet respect, built not on what I explained, but on what I no longer accepted. Clara called me late that afternoon. You're different, she said. More yourself. I always was, I replied. I was just busy trying to fit, she laughed. And now? Now I expand. The following week I received an unexpected invitation, a small photography exhibit from my course. Nothing grand, but meaningful. My photos were there, light, shadows, details I had never noticed before because I was too busy holding someone else's narrative together. The exhibit was simple, 10 photos from each student. Mine were on a side wall, well lit. One of them drew attention, a sunset captured through a wine glass. Light passing through the red liquid, creating golden reflections on the table. As I looked at that image, I thought about that dinner, the raised glass, the laughter, his surprise. I smiled to myself, because there it was, the perfect irony. The toast he made, believing it would diminish me, was exactly what set me free. Not because he wanted it to, but because I chose it. A woman stopped beside me, studying the same photograph. Is this yours? She asked. It is. It's interesting, she said. It feels like a goodbye and a beginning. I looked at her, surprised by how precise her reading was. That's exactly what it is, she smiled. Sometimes the best gift someone gives us is a reason to leave. When she walked away, her words stayed with me. Simple, true, liberating. The last time I saw him was by chance, at a social event, almost a year later. He was with someone, elegant, polite, reserved. He looked ordinary, like someone who still believed life required an audience. He saw me, hesitated, smiled, unsure whether to approach. He didn't. I smiled too, with kindness, with distance, and I continued laughing, talking, living. In that moment, I understood something worth more than any revenge. It's not about who loses, it's about who leaves whole. He gave me a stage. I turned it into an exit. He made a toast. I made a choice. And conscious choices change destinies. Sometimes life doesn't take things away. It gives you back to yourself. And that, although frightening at first, is the greatest gift of all. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Stories We Tell, leave a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us keep creating stories about love, forgiveness, and second chances, because stories that touch the heart deserve to be told and remembered. Thank you for being here.